Everybody. Hello. Good to see you. Thank you for joining us here and abroad in Facebook land and YouTube. Glad to have you in the space. We're going to go into some interesting topics today and very interesting times. As we've been told by the Chinese long ago that the wish that we live in interesting times is really a curse. And interesting times often mean chaotic upheavals and difficulties and challenges and tribulations. And, if we don't have our head in the sand, we can see within the landscape of the world that there's a lot going on. And this actually calls us to a deepening of our spiritual practice and insight and commitments. Otherwise, we can get caught up with the changing winds of the events and get swept away. And so we need a real grounding, a clarity, a firmness, a strength to not only be able to find peace of mind within our own state, our own individuality, but also to be a beacon of light within very dark times. And so we're going to explore some of this today. And speaking about tribulations in the last times, if you've ever, maybe in your college years or in your interests of studying, there in the Judeo-Christian tradition, of course, there's what's called systematic theology. And so you go through these doctrines systematically. So you have theology, you have soteriology, you have ecclesiology, and you have eschatology as these main divisions within systematic theology. Theology is the study of God. Soteriology is the study of salvation. Ecclesiology is the study of what the church's role is in the world, those who have been called out of the world to be a light, right, in dark times. And then eschatology is the end times, right, because the scriptures have a lot to say about what the end is going to be like. And so all of this, as you can tell, is bolstered by what the scriptures have discussed and taught over the millennia. And so in the teachings of eschatology or the end times, there's one interesting passage within the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 24, which is one of the main portions of the Bible that the teaching of the end times is taken. And in Matthew's Gospel, at one point Jesus says, "And because of lawlessness, the love of many will grow cold." Because of lawlessness, the love of many will grow cold. And what lawlessness can mean is corruption at the highest levels, also, at the lowest levels. So, again, if we're paying attention, we can see that in many ways, our society is coming apart at the seams. And there's a lot of corruption in high places, and there's a lot of vagrancy and theft going on in low places. And so lawlessness is running amok. And as a result of dealing with this day in and day out and seeing the news reports and just kind of breathing in the fetid air of such a society, we can begin to shut down. Our hearts can grow cold. We can get despondent. We can get depressed. And so this is where we, again, have to go within and recognize what the teachings are pointing us toward, even in these most challenging of times. That's why, I look at my bookcase at home with all the different traditions and all the books that I've collected over the many years, and I see that as like my medicine chest. And so when I'm feeling a certain way or needing a certain insight or something's going on in the world or in my personal life, I look like, what prescription am I going to pull off the shelf? Because that's what I'm going to need to help me through this challenge. And so I figured today we're going to look a lot into the Buddhist teachings on compassion, because this is what we'll see. We'll see that within these teachings, there is a very deep insight into the nature of reality so that we don't get caught up in the duality of the different conflicts that are going on, whether personally or in some cases nationally and internationally. So, you know, what we want to explore then is a way out of getting caught in the pressures and problems of the world, and then allowing our light to shine in such a way that it brings relief to others. I brought along this book, The Way of the Bodhisattva by Shantideva. It's a classic teaching within both the Mahayana and Vajrayana traditions of Buddhism. It actually starts out with a very good introduction, and one of the things that the introduction talks about is how we can become very irritated and upset by what's going on in the world, as we've been discussing. And it says that when we look and see that others are suffering, or we're suffering maybe from illness or bodily pain or psychological pain, it goes on to say we may dislike the pain, but it would be absurd to resent it angrily. In the same way, the hostile behavior of enemies does not arise spontaneously. It too is the product of causes and conditions. And so what these teachings are having us do is not look superficially at the appearance level, or just the surface level of what's going on in the world, and then take sides and think that one side is right and the other side is wrong. And as a result of our conflicting views, we are now hating the enemy. And what this teaching is pointing out is that fundamentally what we're doing is we're succumbing to anger, right? So anger is actually, in this teaching, the enemy, not what's appearing out there on the world stage. And another way of looking at it, depression would be the enemy, not what's appearing out on the appearance level of the world. And so these types of teachings turn us in and tune us into the recognition that all of our challenges and problems are actually mental states, so that we become immune when we conquer these inner enemies to whatever's going on outside in the world. If we're not immune to the inner enemies, it won't take much for someone to trigger us and to pull us into conflict or despair or anger. And it's because we lack the inner control or vigilance to watch our minds very carefully that we get pulled into these conflict states. So we're going to look at the benefits of what these teachings offer today. And we're going to see it within these two books that I brought along, both relating to the Buddhist teachings on compassion, and then we'll top it off with some teachings around A Course in Miracles. And so to start off, there's this section of The Way of the Bodhisattva where he says, in dealing with life on life's terms, he's like, I am as if benumbed by sorcery, as if reduced to total mindlessness, right? So this is where we begin, and it's an interesting insight when you hear the word mindlessness. What Shantideva is actually saying is we are completely unaware of the nature of mind. And in Buddhist teaching, as well as in A Course in Miracles and other teachings that are akin to this insight, the mind can't be grasped. The mind is like empty space. The mind is infinite and free and boundless and eternally creative. And so everything that we're experiencing as phenomena arises from the ground or the spaciousness of mind, including our bodies, our thoughts, our emotions, everything, chairs, etc., stars, galaxies. Everything's arising from this infinite spaciousness of mind. And that's our fundamental nature. That's why we're one with all Buddhas, right? When we don't know that, We're mindless. And what takes the place of this true identity of being the infinite mind is being the limited ego. And so when we're under the influence of this sorcery as the separate self, as the body identity, we are dealing with the passions that relate to the perspective of the ego. And as long as we're succumbing to the passions of lust, anger, greed, pride, these types of vices are going to create thicker and thicker clouds within our awareness that actually have us stay focused on the phenomena and completely ignore our vast, limitless, creative self or nature. Right? So that's why in meditation, it's really about calming down and releasing our attention and fixation and attachment onto the phenomena in the image making of the mind. And as we do this with proficiency over time, we become more adept at moving out of or disappearing into the ground of being, right? Moving out of phenomena, disappearing into the ground of being. And so then we come back to the recognition that everyone is this mind. What else could they be? Right? So that's where compassion comes in. Compassion is the instinctual or natural attitude toward all living things. Because you recognize that all living things are the one mind. And so Shantideva is saying, when we don't know this, we're benumbed as if by sorcery, as if reduced to total mindlessness. I do not know what dulls my wits. Oh, what is it that has me in its grip? Then he answers it. Anger, lust, these enemies of mine are limbless and devoid of faculties. They have no bravery, no cleverness. How then have they reduced me to such slavery? Right? So another important insight that we are not the master of our emotions when we're identified as ego. We're the slave of them, right? We're pulled by our anger. We're seduced by our lust. We're overwhelmed by our fear. We are, victims of attachment. And so he's saying then, these enemies are invisible. They dwell within my mind, and at their pleasure injure me. And thus, in all this I suffer meekly, unresenting, like passively. We just think this is the way it is. This is who I am. I have these tendencies, and there's really nothing I can do about it. And what we're going to recognize as we move along in today's conversation is not only is there a remedy to this, but as we apply it to our own life, it brings relief to others, even that seem to be halfway around the world. Because again, what we're doing is we're strengthening these attitudes and convictions and virtues that will get rippling out or into the network of the one mind. Right? And all beings will recognize this on a very interior level, and it will help them make those choices as well. So then he says this, all those who fail to understand the secret of the mind, the greatest of all things, although they wish for joy and sorrow's end, will wander to no purpose, uselessly. So the mind, as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, is our greatest friend or our worst enemy. And if we don't recognize that this is a battle fought within the invisible or unseen dimension of the mind between the virtues and the vices, then we will mistake this with an outward battle. And then we will attack others and bemoan our situation because we don't realize what's causing it is our internal state. Yeah. Then Shantideva compares the mind to an elephant. Wandering where it will, the elephant of mind will bring us down to torment in the hell of unrelenting pain. No worldly beast, however wild and crazed, could bring upon us such calamities. So there's nothing in the world that could actually cause more harm than our mind going unwatched and unrestrained, right? That's why he says, miserable defilements scattered, he says, better if I perish in the fire, better that my head be severed from my body, than ever I should serve or reverence my mortal enemies, defiled emotions. So this is, again, where it's the nitty-gritty of our own personal life when no one else is around, no one's looking, we're in our own private world, and we think it's okay to indulge these vices or, places within ourselves that we actually know are out of alignment with our highest truth, with the bright, the beautiful, the holy. And so when we look at them in this way as offering us actual future pain, we will begin to recognize that they are not what we want to strengthen within ourselves. When I look back at how I used to live my life, and still in some cases, when I am reinforcing in myself negative tendencies, and the pain that results, even when I don't think somebody knows that I've done something, I'll watch very carefully if I do indulge a vice, that it will actually show up in my environment. And it's not that the person even knows or is in a direct cause and effect in that situation with my vice, but it's literally me when I indulge that vice asking for punishment, asking for pain. I don't see it that way because there's a seductive appearance or energy to the vice. But when I keep careful watch over my mind, I can track the fruits of the vice and how it will then show up and surface and work through others or events or bodily sensations or physical colds or anything like that. Everything is within a cause and effect paradigm. And we can actually become so vigilant in cultivating virtue that, as these teachings say, that we accrue merit. And merit is a sort of a strange translation of the term. It's actually you receive a charge from virtue, and it brings strength and an alkalinity to your mind, where you shine bright, you're clear, you're strong, you're attuned to reality, and vices and negative states bounce off of you. They can't enter your field because you're clear. But it's like the reverse. When we indulge our vices, our negative tendencies, anger, etc., we actually weaken the field of our mind. And actually, these vices will pierce holes, as we're told, into the field of the mind. And a lot of stuff can slip into that. Negative states breed negative states. They attract negative emotions. They will get entangled with relationships that are toxic. So we can watch our mind and recognize the cause and effect and always know that we're at the causal level, no matter what's showing up in our world. And so we want to recognize that there's an importance to vigilance and to carefully watching the mind and cultivating virtue, right? Because, I see it too. Sometimes we get into these teachings and we think, oh, well, everything's a dream, everything's an illusion, nothing really is real. So it doesn't matter if I indulge in vices, if I violate other people's boundaries. It's just, it's all illusion anyway. But what you'll recognize is shame is brought to you, pain is brought to you, things that will eventually show up as a result. It's like you can't say something is an illusion and then make it real and indulge it and think you're not going to suffer the consequences. You see this a lot. Even spiritual teachers that I've looked at over the years have taken that tact, and it's brought them shame and disgrace, right? So what's being said here today is cultivating virtue, acting nobly, is how we purify the mind. And as we do this over time, the mind gets clearer and brighter, and then we're more attuned to reality. It's not that virtue is going to bring you all the way back to reality. It sets up the condition for you to remember reality. Right? Reality is beyond concepts, beyond action, beyond the body, beyond language and thoughts, beyond actions. But you have to make the field suitable, ready. Right? So then a little more from Shantideva. If with mindfulness's rope the elephant of mind is tethered all around, our fears will come to nothing. Every virtue drops into our hands. Tigers, lions, elephants, and bears, snakes, and every hostile foe, those who guard the prisoners in hell, ghosts and ghouls and every evil wraith, by simple binding of this mind alone, all these things are likewise bound. So what he's saying is, there are troubles out there in the world, tigers, predators, ghosts and goblins and fiends and evil doers and people that want to prey on your goodness or whatever it is. But if you control your mind, if you are mindful, watchful, and cultivating virtue, they can't come in, they can't harm you, right? Because by simple taming of this mind alone, all these things out there are tamed. For all anxiety and fear and pain and boundless quantity, their source and wellspring is the mind itself, as he who spoke the truth declared, namely the Buddha. For all anxiety and fear and pain in boundless quantity all arise from the mind. And thus the outer course of things I myself cannot restrain. So this gets back to like current events and troubles and challenges and bloodshed that's occurring and injustices that seem to be happening that can outrage us as human beings. The inhumanity that we can sometimes get hooked by and get angered and triggered because it's so corrupt, so not right, so lawless. But if we stay within that conflict mind, we don't realize that it's our own internal state that is at issue, that needs to be focused on, that needs to be dealt with. It's our anger at what's going on that is the problem. Once we clear and control that inner state, we can then help, perhaps, better that outer state. So he says, and thus the outer course of things I myself cannot restrain, but let me just restrain my mind. And what else is left to be restrained? Therefore, I will take in hand and well protect this mind of mine. What use to me are many disciplines if I can't guard and discipline my mind? Right? So the priority here is turning your attention fully on what is arising within your mind. And with vigilant introspection, see it. See it for what it is. And if it's in any way a trigger or a vice or something that will bring harm to yourself or another, Shanti Deva says immediately become like a dead log. Don't act on those impulses. Don't sow those seeds into your relationships or into your actions within the world, because it'll be a ripple effect and you're just asking for future pain. So as soon as you have the impulse or the desire or the urge to do something self-harming or harming to another, pause, get quiet, become adept at going into the silent, spacious awareness of your deeper nature. And as again, you become adept at entering the deep stillness, the wide open mind, these impulses literally fizzle away. They lack the sustainability to abide, especially once the mind goes into quiescence, into bright, clear awareness. These vices can't abide in that state. They can only afflict a troubled mind that is ignoring its deeper nature. Then he says, when in wild, unruly crowds, I'm careful and attentive of my wounds. Likewise, when in evil company, this wound, my mind, I'll constantly protect. So he's also saying, like, when you get around certain people, like when in evil company, when you're around people that are not living virtuously, or are there in the past to trigger you and to upset you. So when you're around people that have a pattern of getting your goat, you become more vigilant to watch your mind and protect your peace. Don't give in to the vices of your anger, your judgment. For if I carefully protect my wounds because I fear the pain of minor injuries, why should I not protect the wound that is my mind? So he's kind of talking about like going through a crowded marketplace with like a broken arm. And if you're getting jostled by the crowd, you're making sure that they don't bang into your wound. So on a psychological level, if we have a wounded mind, if we have a weakness within the mind, if we get around pretty girls and we feel overcome by lust, or if we get around a relative and we're overcome by hatred and blame and judgment, whatever it is, we become vigilant to protect our mind, our weakness, so that we no longer allow it to wound us, is what he's saying. If this is how I act and live, then even in the midst of evil folk, or even with fair women, all is well. My steady keeping of the vows will not decline. Okay, and then last thing here. So this is the remedy now. So it's vigilant introspection. So this is why a daily meditation practice where you just abide in the silence and you become very watchful of what's arising in the mind, not identifying with it, not having attachment to it, not having aversion to it, not judging it in any way, not commenting on it. Just being the empty field and allowing whatever's arising to arise, abide, and pass away. But your attention is on the empty field, vigilant. So when we come out of these meditative states and we're back in the throes of our everyday life, this is where the practice has to have teeth or legs, right? We have to actually realize that practice really begins when we get off the meditation seat, right? So if at the outset, let's say this one, um, uh, when mindfulness is stationed as a sentinel, a guard upon the threshold of the mind, introspection will be likewise there, returning when forgotten or dispersed. If at the outset, when I check my mind, I find that it is tainted with some fault, I shall be still and turn inward, unmoving, like a piece of wood. So this is how we cultivate that self-control and the stoppage of creating future pain for ourselves. I shall never vacantly allow my gaze to wander all around, but rather with a focused mind will always go with eyes inward. So this is what he says in A Course in Miracles, that we are far too tolerant of mind wandering. And when our mind wanders, we are unwittingly bringing about events. He says all of your thoughts produce form on some level. That's quite staggering to think about. All thought produces form on some level. And so we are always encountering the products of our thinking. And we think that it's occurring out there in a happenstance reality, but it's really a feedback system of our internal state. That's why in these teachings, in the Buddhist teachings and the teachings of the Course, he's saying that for ordinary people, we are in a dream. We don't realize it, but we're actually just encountering our own mental content. Our thoughts are producing form, and we're interacting with these forms as if they are abiding and existing all on their own, and they have a separate reality. But they are superimposed by our thoughts. We overlay them with all this meaning. We project our state upon them. We're not seeing them. We're seeing our own internal state projected upon them. And so everything that we're interacting with is a dreamlike phantom of our own internal state. That's why when we clear the mirror of our mind, we can begin to see things as they truly are, which is divine. Right? That's why he says it beautifully in A Course in Miracles. A grain of sand becomes the body of Christ. A blade of grass becomes a thing of beauty. Dogen Zenji, one of the great Zen masters, said that rivers chant the sutras, right? There was an art exhibit that Lisa and I went to at Murakami a couple of years ago, and this Japanese Buddhist, what he did in his art was he used the Japanese ideograms of the Heart Sutra, and everything that you looked at were the minuscule engravings of the Japanese Heart Sutra galaxies, ducks in a pond, lighted candles, houses, landscapes. Everything was woven with the mantra of the Heart Sutra. In other words, when our eye of wisdom is clear, we'll see things as they really are, and that is divinity itself. Right? There's no separation between above and below. Heaven and earth become one state. Right? Formlessness and form, right, are one. So we are encouraged to get out of our fantasies and projections so that we can come home to this blissful state of being. So this rampant elephant, my mind, once tied to that great post, reflection on the teachings, must now be watched with all my strength, that it might never slip away. Those who strive to master concentration should never for an instant be distracted. They should always watch their minds, inquiring, where is now my mind engaged? When the urge arises in your mind to feelings of desire or angry hate, do not act. Be silent. Do not speak. And like a log of wood, be sure to stay. And when your mind is wild or filled with mockery, or filled with pride and haughty arrogance, or when you would expose another's secret guilt to bring up old dissensions or to act deceitfully, or when you want to fish for praise, or criticize and spoil another's name, or use harsh language, sparring for a fight, it's then that like a log, you should remain still. Right? Curb those urges, because these are well-worn patterns that we get caught up in. And when you yearn for wealth, attention, fame, a circle of retainers serving you, and when you look for honors, recognition, it's then like a log you should remain. And when you are inclined to overlook another's need and want to get the best thing for yourself, and when you feel the urge to speak, it's then that like a log you should remain. Impatience, indolence, faint-heartedness, and likewise arrogance and careless speech, attachment to your side or your views, when these arise, it's then like a log you should remain. And then finally, examine thus yourself from every side. Take note of your defilements and your pointless efforts, for thus the heroes on the bodhisattva path seize firmly on such faults with proper remedies. Just take a moment, staying within that watchful practice, and guarding the mind, resting and relaxing in the spacious awareness, the brightness of the moment. Deepening the flow of breath. making a clear distinction between this wakeful awareness, this eye of wisdom that watches the arising of all things, their abiding and passing away, but ever remains the watchful witness, distinguishing this deepest nature with the impermanence of all phenomena, subtle and gross. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but this logos, this word, this diamond awareness abides eternally. Relax into it, stretch out, and dissolve the self-image into the vast ocean of your true self. Come home. Open to the compassionate dimension of this clear light awareness. So no matter what you think you've done or what others have done, allow this compassion to cover and dissolve all of these wounds and stains and disappear them back into the ground. And it's on this note of deepest compassion that we want to continue our conversation. You can abide as in the meditative state with your eyes closed as you listen to the teachings, whatever feels best for you. But just notice the innate joy, this blissful state of letting everything go and dissolving into the infinite space of consciousness. And as we become more adept at absorbing our attention into this vast, empty yet full field of our nature, there will be no worldly enjoyment that equals in bliss than this. Nothing gained through the body's senses can equal the joy of coming home to yourself. And so we're going to continue with Geshe Kelsang Sangha, Geshe Kelsang Gyatso's book, 8 Steps to Happiness. He writes, "We are faced with a choice. Either we can continue to squander our life in pursuing worldly enjoyments that give no real satisfaction and disappear when we die, or we can dedicate our life to realizing our full spiritual potential. To follow the path to enlightenment, there is no need to change our external lifestyle. We do not need to abandon our family, friends, or enjoyments and retire to a mountain cave. All we need to do is change the object of our cherishing. Until now, we have cherished ourselves above all others. And for as long as we continue to do this, our suffering will never end. However, if we learn to cherish all beings more than ourselves, we shall soon enjoy the bliss of enlightenment. The path to enlightenment is really very simple. All we need to do is stop cherishing ourselves and learn to cherish others. All other spiritual realizations will naturally follow from this." And so we're going to explore a little more in depth of what he's mentioning here. When we are instructed not to cherish ourselves, he's referring to this image that we're making of ourselves, right? The ego image. And we're making that special and adoring that more than any other being in the universe. But what we've been talking about this morning is this notion of separation is actually a fantasy, it's a dream. And so we've been using our thoughts as a way of structuring and forming an ego that doesn't really exist. It's a fantasy or a delusion in the mind. And we use this delusion to split ourselves off from other beings and create separation and conflict. And as a result, we're not happy because our true state, as we've been saying, is a spacious, all-encompassing, all-inclusive presence. And so to awaken from this dream, we have to see our brothers and sisters as they really are. And we have to abide as we really are. And that's really what creates the connection of unity in our interactions with one another, right? So it's in this section of the course, separating the dreamer from the dream, right? So the dreamer is the true mind, and the dream is identifying with the image, the body-ego image. And so he's saying, accepting this universal love or compassion for yourself means not to give support to someone's dream of sickness and death. This is, again, getting right back into our daily life with the challenges both in the individual sphere as well as in the more collective sphere, where people get caught up in the dramas and traumas that are occurring on the world stage. We, if we're not guarding our mind carefully, can get pulled into the inertia and the undertow of their fear, their anxiety, their hatred. It could trigger us, right? And then what we do is we get lost in our dream, and they're lost in their dream, and nothing but pain results. So he's saying, in order to have this universal love and compassion and peace, don't give support to anyone's dream of sickness or death. You withdraw your belief from it. You don't feed into it. You actually deny its existence in your mind, because what will then result is you'll tear the veil or dissolve the block so you could see them as the Buddha nature. The Buddha nature is eternally stainless, indestructible, forever pure, not subject to the delusions of the dream. But if we are clouded in our understanding, we are not seeing the Buddha nature or the Christ mind, we're seeing the dream, right? And that brings pain to everyone. So when we withdraw our belief in someone's dream of sickness and death, we begin to strengthen the deeper identity in us and them. It means that you share not your brother's wish to separate and let him turn illusions on himself, nor do you wish that they be turned on you instead, right? So this is the other thing. If we're in this, back and forth in our relationship, and the person that we're involved in is really caught up in a stressful situation, we must be skillful and tactful, not to, give them spiritual platitudes and try to fix it with these, words. But we actually see them as they really are. And maybe words will come, maybe not. But we hold them with compassion and love. And we refuse to let them turn the pain onto themselves. We bring some kind of loving response. But you have to watch, as he says here, that if you're not supporting their dream of pain, sickness, and death, they may become very angry at you, right? If you've ever noticed that, somebody who, let's say, wants to be the victim or wants to be right about a problem, and you don't support that, they oftentimes become enraged at your lack of support. So you don't allow that to, blow back on you, is what he's saying. Don't give in to that. Thus they will have no effects, and you are free of dreams of pain because you let him be. Unless you help him, you will suffer pain with him because that is your wish, and you become a figure in his dream of pain as he in yours. So do you both become illusions and without identity. You could be anyone or anything depending on whose evil dreams you share. So finally here, there is a way of finding certainty right here and now. Refuse to be a part of fearful dreams, whatever form they take. For you will lose identity in them. You find yourself by not accepting them and causing you and giving you effects. So this is, again, getting back to watching your mind with vigilance, relaxing into the meditative state, becoming very still and open and spacious. And as your mind gets charged with the virtues and the light, then you are not inclined to get entangled in the dream. And the words will come, the actions will come instinctually because of your inner work. You will see the outward expression in that relationship, no matter how problematic, of your inner state. If you're not guarding your mind and you're allowing that elephant to run rampant, then you will be pulled in. You will set it up for you to fall back into those old patterns of anger, blame, judgment, whatever it may be. So hence the vigilance, the need to practice. So like you, your brother thinks he is a dream. Share not in his illusion of himself, for your identity depends on his reality. Think rather of him as a mind in which illusions still persist, but as a mind which is brother to you. He is not brother made by what he dreams, nor is his body, the hero of the dream, your brother. It is his reality, his stainless Christ mind, right? This ever wakeful awareness that is the brother, not the body, not the fleeting states of what he believes or feels or what his body is. These are all impermanent. That's not brother to you. What's brother to you is the ever-abiding clear light of awareness. So if you identify with that, that's the stability that you could build on in the relationship. But if you identify with anything other than that, you're in dream. So again, last reiteration here, when we meditate, we strengthen our ability to recognize the light of awareness because we're abiding in the light of awareness in a concentrated way. Otherwise, we don't have a inner strength to abide in that when we're in the throes of the relationship. So again, an emphasis on practicing the stilling and quieting of the mind. That's all I got for today, ladies and gentlemen. Blue bag can go around. If you're joining us on Facebook or YouTube, you can click the link and donate to our service. We greatly appreciate your support. If there's any thoughts or feedback from today's talk, love to hear it. We bless the offering. We charge it with the intention that it may bring light and awakening to whoever is touched in whatever form it may take. And so it is. Amen. Well, my friends, we can rise and seal the deal. Coming back to the stillness of the present moment, relaxing into the spacious awareness. And as we release all limitation, we come to know that the light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is. Amen. Have a beautiful day, everybody. Thank you so much. Talk to you later.